Welcome to the world of Sherlock Holmes, where murder is a puzzle, every clue is a riddle, and Watson is basically the unpaid intern who's just trying to keep up. In this movie, Holmes will punch bad guys and sniff evidence like a bloodhound and somehow solve crimes using nothing but brainpower and sarcasm. So grab your magnifying glass, put on your fanciest British accent, and let's dive into a mystery that even Google Maps can't solve. But please subscribe because only 1% people have subscribed, so subscribe. The story begins in 1890 in London. Detective Holmes and his partner, Dr. John Watson, are on a mission to save a kidnapped girl. And the man who is responsible for her abduction is Lord Henry Blackwood, who is about to sacrifice her for dark magic. But just in time, Holmes arrives, grabs his hand and saves the girl. Here, it turns out that Blackwood has already killed 5 other girls for his rituals, but now he is caught and taken into custody by the police.
Then you were supposed to wait for my orders.
Fuck you, bitch!
But even in prison, Blackwood uses his magic to make a guard suffer, proving that his influence is far from over. And when another officer questions him, Blackwood cryptically says he wants to meet someone. Eventually, he gets a meeting with Sherlock Holmes, where the detective sees how much fear Blackwood has instilled in the city. That people believe he has supernatural powers, but Holmes, being a man of science, dismisses such notions. Then, when Holmes confronts Blackwood, he tells him that if he had caught him earlier, he could have saved 5 innocent lives. However, Blackwood coldly responds that their deaths were necessary for a greater purpose. But Holmes remains unimpressed and warns that once Blackwood is executed, he will examine his body to prove there was nothing special about him. But Blackwood laughs and tells that 3 more people will die, and by the time Holmes realizes his role in these events, and it will drive him insane. Then the day of Blackwood's execution arrives, and when asked for his final words, he chillingly states that death is only the beginning. Some moments later, he is hanged, but this is not the end. Some days passes, and a woman named Irene Adler visits Sherlock Holmes. And Holmes knows her well because once he admired her, and she is one of the few people who have outsmarted him twice. Then Irene brings a case to Holmes, asking him to find a man named Riordan. Then she provides some details and leaves, but Holmes suspiciously follows her. And he sees Irene boarding a carriage where a mysterious man is already waiting inside. Disguised Holmes collides with their carriage and tries to engage them by offering to sell a revolver. However, the man inside calmly reveals his own gun, forcing Holmes to retreat. Later, Holmes tells Watson that Irene is working for someone powerful enough to control her. And because she is sharper than Holmes, so the person who controlled it must be very powerful. Meanwhile, the police arrive with shocking news that Blackwood has reportedly risen from the grave, and a guard at the cemetery claims to have seen him walking. But Holmes finds this intriguing, while Watson insists it's impossible since he personally confirmed Blackwood's death. Then police warn that if this news spreads, it will cause widespread panic. So Holmes and Watson accompany the officers to Blackwood's grave. When they open the coffin, they find a corpse inside, but it is not Blackwood. Instead, the body belongs to another man. Then the gathered crowd is horrified, convinced that Blackwood possesses dark supernatural powers. Then the witness who reported seeing Blackwood insists he saw him walking.
And when the dead walk, the living will fill these coffins.
However, upon closer inspection, Holmes and Watson recognize the dead man. It is none other than Riordan, the man Irene had asked Holmes to find. This revelation deepens the mystery, leading Holmes and Watson to track down Riordan's last known address for answers. Then Sherlock Holmes finds a watch inside Riordan's coffin, which leads him to a watchmaker's shop, where he obtains Riordan's address. Then Holmes and Watson arrive at Riordan's residence and uncover that he was working on a major experiment with Blackwood. This place combined both science and the occult. And among the strange artifacts, they find a dead frog inside a copper bowl, along with several other pieces of evidence. Just as they are piecing together clues, a group of men arrives, led by a formidable figure. And their mission is clear: destroy all traces of evidence before Holmes and Watson can uncover the truth. Then a violent fight ensues, causing massive destruction, including an entire ship sinking into the water. In the chaos, Holmes and Watson are arrested and thrown into jail. Then the next morning, Watson is bailed out by his fiancée, Mary, But Holmes remains behind bars until a mysterious benefactor arranges for his release. Then a well-dressed man presents Holmes with a newspaper headline that Blackwood lives and the devil walks with him. This story spreads fear throughout the city, and the man informs Holmes that powerful individuals secured his release and wished to meet with him. So Holmes is blindfolded and taken to a secret location. Some moments later, when Holmes' blindfold is removed, he finds himself facing an authoritative figure. But the man thinks that Holmes doesn't know anything about him and the place. But Holmes, using his sharp observational skills, already knows where he is. Then he recalls the exact route he was taken through and identifies their location. He also notices the man's ring, deducing that he is Mr. Thomas Rotherham, the head of the Temple of Four Orders. And the Temple of Four Orders is like Government of England in 1890. Then Holmes questions the real mystery. Why was he blindfolded in the first place? Then he realizes that these powerful men do not want him to know where he is or whom he is meeting. But his sharp mind allows him to unravel the truth regardless. After this, the secret society members tell him that their organization has always shaped the world from behind the scenes. However, their knowledge can be misused, something people refer to as dark arts or black magic. They reveal their biggest fear is Blackwood. Then Holmes, using his sharp deductions, stuns them by revealing a hidden truth, that Blackwood is actually Thomas Rotherham's son. And he points out the similarities in their facial features, ears, and other characteristics. Seeing this, Thomas, shocked but impressed, admits that very few people know this secret, and he confesses that Blackwood was conceived during a secret ritual. But he never married Blackwood's mother, and now Blackwood has become a grave threat, not just to them but to the world. His powers seem to be growing, making it appear as though he has returned from the dead. But even more alarming is the fact that he has killed not just 5 women, but many more, though it cannot be proven. Then the society members show Holmes an ancient book, claiming it holds the key to Blackwood's supernatural powers, and they fear he is building an army to reshape the world. To stop him, they offer Holmes political, financial, and logistical support. But Holmes remains firm and say, "I am a detective and I choose my own clients. I won't do this for you, nor for money. But rest assured, because this case is already solved." The next morning, Thomas Rotherham is found dead in his bathtub. His signet ring is also missing. Then Holmes and the police arrive at the scene, where Holmes discovers a secret chamber. He quietly collects some evidence before leaving. Meanwhile, the remaining members of the Temple of Four Orders gather for an emergency meeting. Because a member proposes Blackwood as their new leader, but others express concern over his dark ambitions. Suddenly, Blackwood himself enters the room. His presence sends chills down their spines because most of them believe he possesses supernatural abilities. Then he declares that his powers and wisdom serve only one purpose: to build a new world, a future where they will rule supreme. Then he speaks of the ongoing civil war in America, suggesting they can reclaim control and establish dominance over the nation. But one of the members refuses to bow before Blackwood. So he pulls out a gun and shoots him, but the bullet doesn't harm Blackwood. Instead, his entire body erupts into flames, and he burns to death in front of their eyes. After this, the room is filled with fear, and Blackwood reassures them that there is no need to fear. You are all safe. Now pledge your loyalty to me. The remaining members, terrified and convinced of his supernatural strength, reluctantly submit to his rule. So Blackwood is now appointed as the head of the committee. Meanwhile, Sherlock Holmes discovers a factory near the river that provides direct access to Blackwood. Then Holmes and Watson reach the location, only to find a scientific experiment was conducted there, but the machine involved has been removed. Suddenly, Blackwood's voice echoes, confirming that he has been following them. He taunts Holmes, saying he has sent his lamb for slaughter. At that moment, Holmes and Watson see Adler, the same woman who once visited Holmes and gave him the case of the man whose body was later found in Blackwood's grave. But Holmes once had feelings for her, and still does. So together, they rescue Adler, but Blackwood escapes. Then explosions begin at the site. Luckily, the 3 manage to survive. But a police officer arrives and tells Holmes to flee because an arrest warrant has been issued against him, because now Blackwood has enough power to control the police. Then Holmes, Watson, and Adler split up, each going their separate ways. When Adler attempts to leave the city by train, but she's confronted by a mysterious man she works for. He tells her that you can never run away from me. Basically, this mysterious person needs a part of a machine which this dead guy was making for Blackwood. and that's why she wants to get that thing from Blackwood through Holmes, but she failed there, so this mysterious man give a last chance to her. So with no other choice, Adler returns to Holmes. But based on all the recent events, Holmes forms a theory. He points out a 5-pointed star and explains that each of Blackwood's 5 ritual murders aligns with it. Blackwood had earlier warned Holmes that 3 more people would die, and each of their deaths was connected to the Temple of the Four Orders, because the first body was found in a grave that once belonged to Blackwood himself. And the second was Mr. Thomas, who wore a ring with the symbol of a bull representing the temple. And the third victim was burned alive while attempting to shoot Blackwood, found near the symbol of an eagle. Then Holmes explains that these killings represent different symbols, man, bull, and eagle, completing 3 parts of a cross. The final act will complete the 4th part, which represents a lion. By analyzing the map, Holmes deduces that Blackwood's next target is none other than the Parliament itself. But Holmes and his team still don't have the exact location of Blackwood's plan. Just then, the police arrive, and Sherlock Holmes allows himself to be arrested while Watson and Adler escape. Then Holmes is taken to a high-ranking officer who is completely loyal to Blackwood and now intends to kill Holmes. However, Holmes observes details about the officer: the mud on his boots, the red clay on his pants, the cut on his hand, and the foul smell from his body. From this, he deduces that Blackwood's final act is set to take place in the massive underground sewer system beneath Parliament. Today, both Houses of Parliament are meeting, meaning that England's entire government will be inside the building. Then Holmes manages to escape, where Watson and Adler are waiting for him. Then 3 of them rush to the underground location beneath Parliament, where they discover a massive experimental machine. There, Holmes realizes that Blackwood's magic is actually an advanced chemical weapon. He finally understands the project that the scientist whose body was found in Blackwood's grave was working on this machine. And this weapon will change warfare forever, as nothing like it has ever been created before. Then the team eliminates the guards in the basement, and Holmes explains that this chemical weapon will turn liquid into a deadly gas, which will rise through the pipes into Parliament, where the world's most powerful leaders are gathered. They will all die from suffocation, and he also deduces that Blackwood must have a remote control to activate the weapon. Meanwhile, in Parliament, Blackwood is using his dark magic to frighten the members. He declares that a new era for England is beginning and that they will rule the world. However, the members of Parliament reject his leadership. Then, in frustration, Blackwood secretly activates the remote control to release the deadly gas. And just before the toxic vapor can rise, Adler rushes in, grabs the chemical cylinder and runs away. Here, Holmes is busy fighting an attacker and tells Watson to handle him while he chases after Adler. Then Holmes reaches Adler, who tells him she no longer wants to run and she can reveal the entire truth. But before she can, Blackwood arrives, snatches the cylinder from her, and pushes her off the ledge. This leads to a final battle between Holmes and Blackwood, and Holmes gains the upper hand, and Blackwood is ultimately defeated. His foot gets caught in a rope, which is attached to a massive iron weight, pulling him down. As Blackwood struggles, so Holmes reveals the truth that there was never any real magic, only clever trickery. Then he revealed that the prison stunt, where a prisoner pretended to be under a spell, was just bribery. And Blackwood's resurrection from the grave was planned. He had broken and reattached the coffin with glue in advance. And his father's death was staged using a chemical reaction, because Blackwood secretly placed a substance in his father's bathtub that reacted with copper pipes, paralyzing him when it touched water. Then Holmes states that he only figured this out after investigating the lab of the scientist, whose body was found in Blackwood's grave. Holmes explains that Blackwood had tested this chemical experiment on a frog, which Holmes had found dead in the scientist's lab. The biggest mystery, however, was the man who caught fire after shooting at Blackwood. When Blackwood used the same chemical against Watson and the others, the puzzle finally made sense. Then Holmes reveals that when the man entered the temple, Blackwood had sprayed the chemical on him, making him believe it was just rain. And then Blackwood had tampered with the man's gun. When he fired a shot, the reaction caused flames to engulf his body. Then he reveals Blackwood's biggest trick because he is using the chemical weapon to kill everyone in Parliament except for his own followers, whom he had secretly given an antidote. This way, they would believe his powers were real and follow him out of fear. But now his deception has been exposed, and Holmes declares that Blackwood's reign of terror is over, and this time he will truly face execution. Then Holmes cuts the rope pulling Blackwood, causing him to fall. just as Blackwood tries to attack again, but a massive iron structure collapses from above, trapping him in chains. And the chains tighten around his neck, effectively hanging him. And here, Blackwood black magic ends. Afterward, Holmes finds Adler, who has survived the fall. So she confesses that a man named Moriarty, a professor who forced her to work for him because he knew her weakness. She warns Holmes that never underestimate him, because Moriarty is just as brilliant as he is. When Holmes tries to ask about her weakness, she remains silent. Some days later, Watson and his fiancée arrive at Holmes's place only to find him seemingly hanged. But Watson knows Holmes very well. He can never commit suicide. In reality, Holmes is testing how Blackwood survived his previous hanging. And Holmes explains that Blackwood's survival was due to a small hook secretly placed on the noose, shifting the weight from his neck to his waist. Additionally, he had ingested a poison that temporarily paralyzed his body, making it appear as if he was dead. Just then, a police officer arrives reporting that one of their men was found dead where the machine was located. When Holmes examines the body, he immediately realizes that Moriarty was behind it. Moriarty had manipulated Adler into stealing a part of the machine, but what she took was never the real target. Because Moriarty knew Holmes would chase Adler, allowing him to steal the actual crucial piece: the infant science of radio, an early technology for wireless control of devices. In an era before remote controls, this technology was priceless. Then Holmes realizes that this powerful technology is now in Moriarty's hands. As Watson looks on, Holmes smirks and declares that the case is still open. And with that, the story comes to an end. So if you want the next part of the movie, so please like, subscribe, and comment. See you in next recap.